Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this LIBER 2021 online session. Today, we will talk about skills and how to level them up. My name is Cécile Sviatek. I'm a board member at LIBER and the library director in France in the Université Paris-Nanterre. And I'm very happy because today we will have a good session with several speakers. I will call them by their names, but before that, I need to give you some housekeeping notes, and that gives time for the participants to go up to 100, please, because we are almost 100. When we are at 100, I start, right? What do you think about that? So housekeeping notes. We will be running a live Q&A session at the end of this session after all presenters have given their talk. But if there are some small questions, we can manage them right away after the presentation. If you want to ask a question, how does it work? Well, you can use the chat window at any time, but you might notice that at the bottom of your screen, there is a question and answer box, and that can be useful to use it. Please tell us which presenter the question is for. Following the online conference, you will receive a link to a short survey. Please fill it out. We welcome your feedback. And finally, if you miss anything, if you have missed anything, if you think you will miss anything, well, don't worry. The sessions are being recorded. That will be the case for this one. And we will send you the recording and slides after the session finishes. So I'm going to share my own screen to give you some quick information. So that's our session. We will end at 3 p.m. sharp. This is probably what I just told you. And in today's session, the most important thing is who are we going to hear today? So we will hear presentation from Elisa Rodenburg, from Anne Barnhart, from Rebecca Bryant and Astrid Verheusen. We will end with a speed talk or lightning talk given by Irena Vipacbar from Slovenia. And I invite you all speakers to join me and open your cameras. Thank you, everyone. We will start with the first presentation. Today, we will start with Elisa Rodenburg. So you are, I think, a research data steward at the University Library of Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, so the Open University of Amsterdam. In that position, you answer research data management questions, you develop information resources about RDM and assist your colleagues with the courses that are offered to the Open University researchers. But you also carry out community management tasks for the RDM community. Today, you will tell us a horror story, I think, a data horror virtual escape room. And we would love to see how it works and if we can escape this with you. So Elisa, over to you.
Thank you, Cécile, for this very nice introduction. I hope we can all escape my presentation. Just to clarify, I will share my screen in the meantime. Yes. You should all be able to see my screen now. Just to clarify, the Vrije Universiteit is not so much the Open University of Amsterdam, it's just the other University of Amsterdam, because the University of Amsterdam is most well known to an international environments, I suppose. So today I'm very honored and very pleased to be able to talk to you about our experiences with gamification for online research skills training, and what I'm going, in particular, I'm going to talk about the escape room, the data horror escape room that we developed, and to how it can be used in a wider context. Let's see if I can change my slide. So I'm going to first talk about a little bit of theoretical background about game-based learning. I'll tell you what our escape room is and what it does, who has played it, how we created it, and there will be some time for a short Q&A, I suppose. And I wanted to use this moment to thank Anne Aerts from the Eindhoven University of Technology, Lena Karvolskaya, who's my colleague at the VU, and Joanne Yeomans from the Universiteit Leiden University. They really helped me in preparing this presentation, and they are also my co-conspirators in creating the escape room. And Anne's colleague Bart Aben was another co-creator, but he has left the university since. Educational or serious games are games that teach some kind of knowledge or skill, and game-based learning means to learn through such a game. In the past few years, there's been an increase in educational and serious games created by university libraries. However, these games usually focus on education, that is on students, and they are also usually developed by libraries to teach library skills or information literacy skills. And earlier this year, there was a session of the Dutch National Council for Education and Information Literacy Skills, and it's a very short acronym in Dutch, fortunately. And a few of these games were shown, and they were really developed to teach students how to use the library. However, games teaching research skills have also been on the rise in the past few years, and this was also showcased in the annual Research Board Games Day at Robert Gordon University Aberdeen. And Daisy Abbott has developed a theoretical framework for assessing and developing such games that teach research skills. And the most important thing in game-based learning is that these game-playing elements, or the fun, is aligned with the learning outcomes. So there should be some space for reflection as well. What did we learn playing this game? And for the escape room, we also built this into the formal playing events. There was always time to ask questions and to discuss the game after playing. And a number of other factors that Abbott names are, that should be in effective games are active participation, immediate feedback, something like dynamic interaction, competition, obviously, novelty, and goal direction. And we all work this into the escape room to some extent. And another factor that she talks about is what she calls pleasantly frustrating experiences, and those are all very present in the horror theme that we chose for this game. So the base of the game is actually horror. So what did we create? What is a data horror escape room? As I said before, it was a collaboration between these 3 Dutch universities, and the escape room introduces basic concepts that are addressed in a data management plan, or DMP. And a DMP is a document in which a researcher indicates how they plan to manage their research data, and they're written for a variety of occasions, such as grant applications, ethical reviews, things like that. And RDM and DMPs are often considered boring topics, a little bit dry. They have to follow this course, but it's not considered so much fun. So we wanted to create something fun. And we also wanted to create an event hosted by the library in COVID times, because there are not that many events and we couldn't host personally. So we created this escape room that is online. It's fully online. It's also played fully online. And it basically works like any other escape room where a player is locked in an office or a room, in our case, an office, and the player solves puzzles that give them clues to submit a DMP. And after they submit the DMP, they can escape. So we wanted to show you what it looks like. They end up on this landing page, which is the office, and they can navigate through all of the different things that are in the office, and they can go and they can click on it and play a puzzle. If they want to click open the door, they get a terrifying note saying that they have to submit the data management plan first. And this is what the what such a page looks like. So this is on the desk. We find the professor's address book, and the puzzle is integrated with the address book. And this is about personal data. So we launched this game at the VU at the end of October 2020, and it has since been played and presented on a variety of occasions, such as the Research Sport Games Day and training sessions for researchers and support staff. It can be played individually and in teams using breakout functionality in Zoom, and we have 2 different instances for playing individually and for playing in teams. And we got some very nice, extremely positive feedback. And we also got some suggestions for improvements that were basically technical, but many players reported learning something new about RDM or reinforcing their pre-existing knowledge. And they also really liked the interactive setting, and that they thought that the game design was done very well. So the game was structured very well. And they thought the humor in the puzzles was very nice. And we also even got a very nice blog post of someone we don't know and who just stumbled upon the game. And she was very positive about it. And we didn't ask her to write this, so it's completely genuine. And I wish I could show you the entire blog, but she also reveals all of the solutions to the puzzles. So I'd better not show you before you've played it. So what we also wanted to give a little bit of advice, tell you how we did it and what we recommend, how you adapt it or how you build your own game. And it lends itself very well for exploration and awareness raising, topics such as open science. So we had a group of 5 people with who we developed it, and an ideal workflow would be to first think of a story and puzzles, and when you've got all the links, then set up the website. And we didn't do this ideally, so we had to kind of go back and forth and try and test and fail. But this is what I would recommend. We also looked at, I would also recommend thinking about intended learning outcomes before you start building it, because we wanted to raise awareness and address some of the questions that people very often had, but we didn't really think, what should they know about RDM after finishing this game. And it all ended very well, and I think we did very well, but we didn't really consider intended learning outcomes in advance. So we use Google Sites, and that works very well. Also, if you have no experience creating a website, building a website, and designing it, but it means you are bound to the limitations of Google Forms. We use Google Forms for the puzzles, but it means that sometimes you have to adapt the way that you ask a question or create a solution to the way that Google Forms just works. So the escape room was published with the Creative Commons license of attribution and share alike, and you should feel free to play it and share it and host it. I added the links to both the self-directed version and the live playing version. These slides are going on Zenodo, so you will get the links. And I'm happy to answer any immediate questions now, but if you have any difficult questions or you want some help creating your own escape room, feel free to get in touch with me via email. And I'll stop sharing now. Cecile, you are still muted.
Thank you, Elisa. I just dropped the link to the Abbott's article you were mentioning in the chat box. You can feel free after your presentation to send the tiny URLs that were appearing on the slides so people can directly react. For the moment, I don't see any direct question. Yes, there is one. We can maybe handle it right now because it's very short. How long did it take in average for the participants to escape?
Oh, well, we thought it was going to be about 40 to 15 minutes, which I think is the average. The fastest team did it in 30 minutes, and but there were also people who needed over an hour. I think if you're playing it with beginning players, then you would need to schedule an hour.
Okay, I will keep some questions for the Q&A part, especially about the collaborative question and about your own experience as a gamer, but we can just have a small question still that is very factual. There is a double question. First, is the escape room designed for accessibility? And the other one was about the tools that can be used, because you mentioned Google Zoom. Is there an adaptability here?
Let's see. Yeah, so we used Google Sites. And I know it's not, that is because we use Google for education. And there are some disadvantages to using this Google Sites. You can raise all sorts of privacy issues about using Google, and it's also tied to somebody's personal account at the university. So if someone leaves the university, the website is presumably gone. That being said, Google was so easy to use, and none of us had any experience with web design, and we managed to create a website that looked good, and also that worked very well and that linked very easily. So yeah, I would if you have little experience, I would use that. And I think for video platforms, you can basically use anything that creates breakout rooms. It doesn't have to be Zoom. Yeah.
Thank you. We can see that some people are giving their own experience and feedback, for example, with LibWizards. Please feel free, dear participants, to send your tips and good ideas and good practices and share them with the 124 participants that are attending the session. For the data horror, I'm waiting for 666. That could be better. We have the time just for a last question. It's about time. How long did it take to conceive this work, more or less?
Well, when we really started going, it took us about a month, but we were kind of stressed out that we wouldn't be in time. So I would take, and if you're really designing it well, I think you would need some more time. I would say at least 3 months.
So 3 months for conceiving the game?
Yes, for everything, for thinking of the puzzles.
And setting up the site?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that answers an extra question that I received.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Elisa, for your presentation. We managed to escape quite easily from this one. Maybe that will be harder with Anne Barnhart, that is going to join us on stage. Because that's the next show. We are going to talk about online asynchronous information literacy courses. So Anne, you are from West Georgia, University of West Georgia in the USA. You are professor and head of outreach and assessment. And you work with the library and information science field. So today, I think you're going to explore LibraryDen, an open online information literacy course. This project was intended to create a useful learning object with integrated assessment. And this is very interesting. We would love to hear more about this, and you see how you manage this remote learning and assessing process. Well, tell us more about it.
Thank you, and thank you for joining me today, all 125 now of you. And thank you for the LIBER organizers for accepting my proposal and all the technical assistance. So I want to talk about this online asynchronous course that we created during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And many universities, consequently their libraries, faced enrollment and financial challenges due to the pandemic. However, where I am, the financial problems due to low enrollment predated the pandemic. So we had been a growing university. We're about an hour west of Atlanta, which is why we're West Georgia. If you look on a map, we're right next to the state of Alabama. And we had, in the fall of 2018, 16 faculty librarians, but before the pandemic, we were down to 11 due to budget cuts. People left and we didn't replace them. So we already had a problem of how we were going to help and meet the needs of approximately 13,000 students. We knew that we needed to find some sort of sustainable and scalable way to provide information literacy instruction to our students, but no one had any time to create anything because due to our numbers, we were spread so thin. And again, this was before any of us had heard of COVID. So in March of 2020, with the rest of the United States, our university pivoted to remote learning for the foreseeable future. Our classes were moved online in an asynchronous format. We are in a rural area of the state, and just the economic demographics of our student population, we couldn't count on them having reliable internet. So we needed asynchronous options and preferably things that weren't going to take a lot of bandwidth. We didn't have immediate decisions about how the fall of 2020 would proceed with courses, but we assumed that we would stay online. And our library had a fairly robust face-to-face instruction program and even online synchronous workshops through Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, but we really had not done enough that was asynchronous or self-directed. And then when we realized this, and this is the picture of my home office with my office mate, my dog. So then we're at home trying to do all this. And in addition to needing to respond to the student needs, I started hearing faculty panic from my friends that were faculty. Many had never taught online before. They were faced with having to homeschool their own children, figure out the new technology, and wonder how they were going to buy groceries without getting their entire family sick from the pandemic. So I was seeing their frustration, their panic in social media posts, and I wanted a way to alleviate the stress of the faculty as well. And library staff were feeling very anxious. Many had positions that required them to be physically present in the building. And due to budget cuts, they were afraid that if they were working remotely but had no work, that they would lose their jobs. So this is the environment that I was in. And these are just some posts from that faculty Facebook group so you can see what they were going through. The only asynchronous online tool that we had was library DIY, which we had modified. Library DIY was created by librarians from Portland State. As you can see, it's in a SpringShare LibGuides. It's Creative Commons licensed. We had adapted it to our circumstances, which means that we took the information. So you can see library DIY. If you aren't familiar with it, it's still very valuable. I recommend that because it has a series of 70 tutorials about how to do research, and then you can add screenshots. You just modify it to your own circumstance. And they won the Association of College and Research Libraries Award for this in 2014. So we had modified that a few years ago, but we hadn't marketed it. It was just another thing sitting on our webpage that we hadn't done anything with. So I started thinking about the fact that we had this, hadn't done anything with it. How can this become more? So I envisioned outlining not just those tutorials. Those tutorials assume that students even know what questions they have. You can see here that the students have to know that they even need a book or an article. And if they're a very beginning researcher, a first semester student, depending what their preparation is, they might not even know where to go in the library DIY. So I wanted to think about how we could use it and offer something to faculty that they could incorporate in their courses, some kind of free content they could drop in since they were concerned about what they were going to do in the fall. So I envisioned a course that was centered around the library DIY tutorials, using those as a textbook and building a course shell around them. And it was something that I could work collaboratively on with the library staff who were panicked about whether or not they could justify getting a paycheck. And since our mascot is the wolves at the University of West Georgia, wolf-themed names are given to all the local branding. Our CMS is Course Den. So in this spirit, I named the course LibraryDen. So working with colleagues, I selected approximately 45 of the 70 library DIY pages and thought about a logical sequence that they could go to make a course. Arrange them into modules with auto-graded self-assessments associated with each DIY reading assignment. Library staff read through the DIY pages and wrote the assessment questions. One colleague in cataloging wrote almost all the questions. She is very current on popular culture and incorporated pop culture references to keep it interesting. And the feedback, the students love the questions because there's some from Harry Potter, some from Tiger King. I do realize this means that we'll probably want to change those references in a few years, especially some of the ones that were very of the moment. But for now, the names and the questions still work. And another staff member managed all the pieces and made sure that every page was looked at by a couple of people and that the questions were reviewed by different people. So she kept everything coordinated. And once we had a few modules completed, we needed to test them. Fortunately, the library, in addition to our full-time staff, has a lot of student workers, and they also wanted to keep earning money, but their jobs were to reshelve books, libraries closed, to check out laptops, libraries closed. So to give them something to do, we hired them as testers. So even though they were working remotely, one was even at home in Barcelona, they read through all the pages, found typos that we should have found before, but they found all those errors, read associated questions, tested all the links, and timed how long it took them to take the course. We were able to do several rounds of testing, and make a much better product this way. And this is just, the students were asked, what content did you find useful? Which questions were confusing? Were there questions that were too easy? Questions that were too hard? And we asked them to suggest other questions. And in LibraryDen, we list every student that served as a tester to acknowledge their work. We asked them to evaluate it as a learning tool. And these student testers said that they found it valuable, which was really gratifying. It wasn't just something librarians wanted to do. The students liked it. We thought perhaps students who work in the library were going to be biased. So in the summer, we got students from other departments on campus, and they also tested it, so we could get a better idea of the perceived value from other students. We began promoting it to faculty across campus as a potential tool for them to incorporate in their fall 2020 courses, promoting it through faculty Facebook groups, in faculty meetings that were online, and direct emails to faculty teaching entry-level research courses. When doing the presentations, we included some of the student testers as co-presenters, giving the students presentation experience and letting the faculty hear from the students themselves. And one thing that that faculty needed to know was how long it took to do, because if they're going to incorporate this in their class, then they need to know how much work it is total. And to go through all 8 modules, it was between 5 and 6 hours was the average. So when faculty would ask, how much should I weigh this? I would tell them, if you assume a student spends 100 hours in the semester on your course, this is worth 5%. And we also provided the learning outcomes so faculty could see where it fit on their syllabus. And these are written in a very librarian way. So I think that one thing we need to do is rewrite these in a way that faculty might understand them a little better, and that they might match up better with what is on their syllabi. So that's something that occurs to me to do for the future. So in the fall of 2020, 16 courses, 21 sections total, were enrolled in LibraryDen, ranging from second-year undergraduates through incoming graduate students. Some of these faculty assigned it for part of the grade. Others offered it as extra credit, and those students just didn't bother to do it. So about 250 students completed LibraryDen. In the spring, we had fewer courses, but that's because there are fewer, the introduction to the major courses and methodology courses tend to be offered in the fall. So it's not surprising that we had fewer in spring. And about 215 students completed it. So we had a higher completion ratio because fewer people offered it for extra credit. And in the summer, we don't have many courses in the summer. So right now we just have 65 students in it. And we don't know yet what fall would look like. We have a graduate program for future school librarians, and those students used it not just to learn how to use the library, but evaluated it as a tool that they might use as future school librarians. All right, so that was the process. That's what it looks like. What happened? Students learned. That's what happened. So we have a pre-test and a post-test. And we can see that student learning definitely increased from the pre-test to the post-test. The difference between fall and spring is that we made a change allowing 2 attempts because that was a request from both students and faculty. So, but I think that it still shows. We use, I see the question about the LMS, we use desire to learn. But we're really pleased with this. So we know it works, but what do the students think? The students see it as valuable, which again, that doesn't always happen. So what we see is that The question, and this was an anonymous feedback survey, so not all the students did it. Only the ones who felt strongly are going to do it. But we see that the question, LibraryDen is useful to me as a UWG student. Between 80 and 86 agreed or strongly agreed. 70 to 77% would recommend it to friends and classmates. And 65 to 69% were glad their professor included it in the course. And again, I don't know your experience. We normally don't get students that are happy about learning about the library after spending 5 to 6 hours doing it. So we were really happy about that. And some of their comments were that it should be required for all students. And since it's scalable, we could do that. In the library, I don't have the power to make it required for all students, but we have the ability to meet that need if that is what comes down from on high. Others commented on what they learned. A consistent complaint was that it was text heavy and they want more graphics or videos. We got feedback from faculty. They also really liked it. They liked what they saw in their student work from doing this. The faculty who use it are then repeat users. And the one request is for us to make discipline specific versions, which we might start with some optional modules, but we, again, it's time, right? So we made some changes between fall and spring, minor ones, because there isn't much time over the Christmas New Year break. And what we did is we rewrote some of the questions for clarity, reordered some of the content for clarity, changed it so there are 2 opportunities for the assessments. And one thing some faculty didn't know how to incorporate it in their classes, because LibraryDen teaches the theory of research, but they need to do the practice in the class. So I created very rough suggestions for assignments and reflection question pairings that faculty could use. For example, you can see a couple examples here. I explain in kind of a faculty guide what's in each module. This is what you could assign. Here's where you might want an annotated bibliography due. And so they could time it and integrate it better across the weeks of their semester. So upcoming enhancements, this summer, we're adding more visual elements. My student workers are taking lots of screenshots, and those visual elements don't go in the LMS, they go in the LibGuides of Library DIY as the course text. So the visual, the graph, the screenshots and the little videos have life outside the course, which makes them even more useful, because Library DIY still is on our page if anybody wants to use it. And I'm hoping to work with a course in the College of Education and have those grad students develop better paired assignment suggestions as part of their coursework, because then they could do it for their class and it could work for LibraryDen. The response from the profession has been great. We won the American Library Association Library Instruction Roundtable Innovation for Instruction Award. So we're really pleased that Portland State, who made Library DIY, won an award, and then we built on theirs and won an award. So we're really happy to give this back. That's why we Creative Commons licensed it. And current project that I'm super excited about is I'm working with 4 universities in Mexico, because my background is Latin American studies. So Universidad de Guadalajara, Colegio de México, Universidad Veracruzana, and the Benemérita Universidad Autónoma de Puebla. And we're creating a version in Spanish, not a translation, because it's so culturally specific, but an interpretation. So it'll be a version that will Creative Commons license. And so we're translating the library, interpreting the Library DIY and LibraryDen, and we just are getting started on that this week. So we hope to be able to offer, like I said, something in Spanish within the year. And if you're interested in knowing more, there's a LibGuide that's all about LibraryDen, and you can see some more screenshots, some videos about it, and we're very interested. We don't have it where you can just download a copy of it, but we can send you the common cartridge is what it's called from our LMS. And we're also interested in having people test it in other LMSs. We know it works in Desire to Learn, and we know that that translates more or less to Canva, but we don't have the ability to test others. So thank you. I hope we still have time for questions.
Thank you, Anne, for this tour in the LibraryDen and its renewal. We have time for a quick questions because we will keep the general ones for the Q&A part of the session. What LMS, so for those who do not know this, it's a library management system. So what LMS do you use for LibraryDen?
The Desire to Learn, that's from Brightspace. That's the LMS, or the LMS. I'm sorry, we don't use it. There's not an LMS. It's in our CMS.
Okay.
So that's where it is. Our campus uses that.
Well, thank you very much for this specification. We will keep maybe the general questions I saw in the box for later. Just a short one from Marta Bustillo before we shift to the next presentation. Did you use a specific information literacy framework to design the modules?
We looked at, we incorporated elements from the ACRL framework. We were more, I guess the short answer is no, we weren't using that too heavily, but we were incorporating elements from it. But they're longer answers, but we'll save those.
Okay, for those who do not know it, I will put the link to the ACRL framework, because for those people who are in Europe, we are not that used to it and to the its specificities. But thank you very much. Now we will turn to the next presentation, which will be presented by two speakers. Astrid Verheusen from LIBER Europe has just appeared, and Rebecca Bryan from OCLC opens her camera too. So Rebecca, you are a senior program officer at OCLC Research, and you lead research and outreach activities for academic libraries, especially when it's about research support and cross-institutional collaboration. And Astrid, you are the executive director of LIBER. You are a librarian, but you began as a researcher at the Institute for Dutch History and as project manager. So you have a very rich background, and the two of you want to present today something about how you can develop social interoperability to advance open science, because OCLC and LIBER had a joint effort about this topic. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you, Cecile. So we indeed very much appreciate to present here an activity of LIBER and OCLC that we have done in the past year.
I simply suggest that the person who is sharing the screen shares the screens for the presentation and not the presenter's side. I suspect there is a double screen somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing my notes?
Yes, we are on the presenters.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you
there
very
we
much.
go. Thank you for letting me know that.
Okay, so I think we're good now. So this session is indeed co-organized jointly by LIBER and OCLC. I don't think at this conference I need to explain what LIBER is, but let me do it one more time. So LIBER is the European Association of Research Libraries and is comprised of somewhat 450 national university and other research libraries. And the OCLC Research Library Partnership is a transnational network of more than 130 research libraries. We are presenting the results of a joint effort to develop social interoperability on the campus to advance open science. So we are talking still about skills, but here we address another type of skills and another target group. So we are talking today about soft skills for research librarians. And I now hand over shortly to Rebecca for the acknowledgement.
Hi, I want to make a short sort of land acknowledgement statement. I'm based in the United States in Dublin, Ohio. And I know that we are, all of us as speakers and attendees are in different places, and the technology that we use similarly flows over a multitude of landscapes. We just want to express gratitude for those of us who were before us and celebrate the Indigenous people on whose traditional land and airways we meet. Thank you, and I invite you to join us with reflection, knowledge seeking, and appreciation today.
So a little background about the series we are talking about today. Last year, we had another discussion series. From September to November, OCLC and LIBER hosted a discussion series on open science. This discussion series was based on the LIBER Open Science Roadmap and was intended to help research libraries understand their role at the local, national, and global level in supporting the infrastructure for open science. We encouraged participants to create a vision of the ideal future state of the open science ecosystem and how to get there. The discussions were organized around the 7 focus areas, which are described in detail in the LIBER Open Science Roadmap. So from scholarly publishing until citizen science. Next slide. Our aim was to offer a forum to engage both of our networks and an opportunity to exchange ideas across the Atlantic. We also wanted to identify key research questions that LIBER, in cooperation with OCLC, can address to advance the role of research libraries in an emerging open science landscape. So next slide. We had good participation and we got very positive feedback from the attendees. The summaries of the discussions have been shared via blog posts on LIBER and OCLC's website. So we structured that discussion series around 3 main questions. What does an ideal future state look like for the open science ecosystem? What are the main challenges for research libraries to get there? And how can libraries and other communities take collective action? So next slide. In the ideal future, looked like this. So to summarize the discussion, in an ideal future, culture has changed. All research processes are open, transparent, and inclusive. Infrastructure, services, and data are interoperable and accessible. Librarians have all necessary skills. New methods are in place for metrics and rewards. And libraries cooperate with almost everyone. So an important aspect was, if you can go back, yeah, two important aspects were the cooperation with all and the skills. So in the future, the ideal future, research libraries will work together with just about everyone, not only the researchers will be central, but all stakeholders will work together instead of competing. And there will be research collaboration across different institutions and different research areas. Another main finding in the discussions was that library staff felt ill-equipped to engage in an impactful way with the non-library stakeholders who are essential to the success of open science. Participants recognize that open science must be a collective effort, and therefore further developing the skills needed to foster collaborations and communications was welcomed as a positive next step. So we had a look at those skills that were necessary, and we in the end distinguished two different sort of skills. So we talked about soft skills that are needed for research libraries to be able to walk in the shoes of researchers, students, and citizens. So also to talk the same language, but also we talked about hard skills. So the basics of the software programming tools, etc. After the discussion series, next slide, concluded, LIBER and OCLC sat down and decided to take up two of the biggest challenges that were named in the discussion series: the wish to develop soft skills and the wish to collaborate with everyone. And this slide shows the team that took up these challenges and worked on a new discussion series on social interoperability. The series took place last month in May, and Rebecca will now tell you more about what took place during those series.
All right, so I'm going to start with a little bit about our workshop planning. Is that we wanted to develop a workshop that supports that soft skills development, and we thought of this as a potential pilot, and for us to assess it as such. We identified a target audience of mid-level library managers and practitioners at research universities, and again, we wanted this transatlantic partnership. So as we talked, we went back to some work that I had done with Annette Dortmund and Brian Lavoie, also at OCLC. It was a research report from OCLC that was published in fall of 2020 called Social Interoperability and Research Support. And this report examines the perspectives of non-library stakeholders related to research support services, which we believe is inclusive of open science. So it documents why this is hard. It offers a framework for understanding the key stakeholders, and it offers strategies and tactics. And this was a report that was done through a series of semi-structured interviews with US research universities. And so we were also interested with this pilot in seeing if our findings for the US were as true for folks in Europe as well. So I'm going to go back to this slide related to our planning. We planned 3 90-minute sessions based, using this report as sort of the basis for the content in 3 consecutive weeks in May, with a combination of presentations about the content from the report and small group discussions and some polling. We wanted about 40 participants, and we really wanted people to engage. So we asked them to have advanced reading, we sent them handouts, etc. We jointly promoted this to both of our organizations, restricting the participation in this pilot to folks who are LIBER members and folks who I also work with through the OCLC Research Library Partnership. And I have beginning in mid-April, but the promotion began in mid-April. So we ended up with this 3-part series. High level, session 1 was about understanding institutional collaboration. Why is it hard? And who are the stakeholders related to research support and open science? The second session was understanding the strategies and tactics and looking at some case studies to sort of put those in some perspective and some context. And then the final session was really about taking what we learned in the first 2 sessions and making some plans and goals for the future and how you're going to do this at your institution. So I'm going to very quickly go through what we covered here. Session 1, understanding the landscape. Here's some results in the text box here of what people said about the training was, I learned that some unexpected stakeholders are very valuable. And here, the other one is also sort of gratifying for me because they said, I thought the fact that I found relationship building difficult was somehow my fault. And this made me realize that complexity is built into the system, which I think is so true. So our content here was really about introducing the report, the concept of social interoperability, that universities are complex adaptive systems. And this is building on some research from some other folks there. And then offering a framework for positioning different campus stakeholders. Regardless of your institution, we wanted a framework that sort of discussed that. The thing I want to leave you with here is that we really want to impart this definition of social interoperability. You know, we go to conferences and we talk about technical interoperability, and then we sort of say, yeah, and there's the social parts about making this happen, and that's very hard. We want to name that. This is the creation and maintenance of working relationships between individuals and units that promotes that collaboration, mutual understanding, and forwarding goals of things like open science. So for us, it's the social stuff, but it's really, we want to call that social interoperability. And that's the goal of the series. So in the second session, we prepared case studies. And so this person went away with something very tangible, saying, I learned that I can be prepared with a welcome packet with ideas on how our units can work together. So being more proactive in that relationship building. So in this second session, we gave an overview of strategies and tactics. So this is really the soft skills. We explored these in the context of 3 case studies, one from the Netherlands, one from the United States, and the one from Canada. And again, in this sort of combined collaborative format. And we used a combination of these polling to sort of talk about, so and this is the case of University of Waterloo, what tactics did they exemplify in their case study? And so, you know, things like knowing your audience, timing, sharing staff, etc. And so we could talk about those sorts of things. And then very quickly, this is our third session, which at this point, you know, we're wanting to sort of see how we can get everybody on the same bus moving together. And this person, another person said, the most useful thing I learned was the prompt questions for starting discussions. So here we return to sort of session 1 is, who are the stakeholders on your campus? Who do you have relationships? And talked about how each of the participants can begin applying those strategies and tactics learned in session 2 and begin creating a plan. We also reviewed a script that we thought was used at another institution about learning about other units. We also talked about individual barriers for action. Is that, wow, I'm nervous about moving forward with this. I don't know anybody, and also examining those. One thing I think was really useful was the script that came from the US Rutgers University and the New Brunswick campus from their strategic planning. And then again, this is also in the report and in one of the handouts from the session, which was really useful for learning about another institution. I'd probably call this an informational interview. The goal is really to learn about how the library can help and also to educate them about the library, but it's really about gaining additional understanding about that other unit, because you need that in order to really partner together. So quickly here, some positive results. We had high retention, first session 35 down to 29. We were pleased that we didn't have much drop off. And we also found that people found the series useful for their professional development, with everyone, with about half of the participants answering the survey saying yes, or rather yes, that they found this useful. They also were motivated. And so, you know, in black here in the green, this helped me and will make a difference in my group. And also the last part here in the orange, because I realize I'm running short on time, people also commented on the global nature of this and this chance to work across the Atlantic. This was very helpful to seeing common challenges also. In the first session, we asked people to describe how they felt about cross-campus collaboration. They used words like complex, challenging, improvable. But when we asked this question at the end of session 3, the word that came through was optimistic, ready to dive in, ready to try, relieved. And so we felt like people felt more prepared to collaborate across their institution. So this is really my last slide, and then we can take some questions. We're going to finish assessing the pilot and also discuss where we go from here. And we even had some participants say, could we reconnect in 6 months? So we'll look at that. What I invite you to offer us, and you can answer this either by Twitter or email to us, or preferably in the chat. Is this training you would be interested in, and would it be for you individually or for your institution? Because that's also something we're exploring, is different audience groupings for this. So I'll leave that with questions. I'm also going to stop sharing my screen so I can see folks. There we have it.
Thank you, Astrid and Rebecca. If there are any questions from the audience, I would be happy to pick them, short ones. Otherwise, you can use the chat box and the Q&A box for larger questions that will be dealt with at the end of the session. Yes, we have a question for Rebecca. Do you offer any accreditation for the training?
We did not. Although this was something we discussed about offering a certificate, we didn't offer this upfront, but sort of decided if someone asked us, we would comply with that and would be happy to. So maybe that's the best answer there.
Thank you very much. I circulated in the chat the link to the OCLC study. If you have any other links to the discussion series blog posts, you can feel free to put them so that the participants can have them about this how to advance open scholarship at your institution series. Well, thank you very much. We will continue our journey, and we will have a lightning talk now, which is about experience, feedback, and tips from Irena Vipaš-Varban from the Slovenian Social Science Data Archives. You are head of the department at the Social Science Data Archive at the Faculty of Social Sciences in Ljubljana. And dear Irena, we are very happy to have you today because we can make the link from the studies and the practices, the gaming practices, to the real concrete life experience of implementing the RDA's 23 things we need to know. And since you are a trainer and an active promoter of open science, your voice will be carefully heard today, and over to you.
Thank you, Cecile, for this introduction. I must say that it's really my pleasure to be part of this session because there were really some good presentations, and I'll take the liberty of getting, the information that was here to put it also in what I'm doing here in the data archive. Hello, everyone. Just to acknowledge that this presentation was prepared jointly in collaboration with my co-worker, Anna Inkret, and also with a colleague from Center Tehnika Library at the University of Ljubljana, Mitja Iskric. And yes, this talk will present research data management resource for librarians that was produced by the Research Data Alliance Node Slovenia. So for those of you who are not aware, and I'm sure that most of you are, but Research Data Alliance is a global member-based organization that focuses on the development of infrastructure and community activities to reduce the social and technical barriers to data sharing and reuse, and to promote the acceleration of data-driven innovation and discovery worldwide. So the RDA has an enormous base of knowledge and resources that we were keen to embrace, and one of that is going to be presented today. Just about the node itself, Slovenia's node was established in 2019 as one of the 13 new national nodes within the Research Data Alliance Europe project. Our node was supported by the National Research Data Infrastructures, while the Slovenian Social Science Data Archives became the coordinator, and we are still presently taking over this role. So the aim of the node was to act as a contact point between the Research Data Alliance, Slovenian service providers and other stakeholders, as well as national policymakers, to support the implementation of national open access strategy. With this task in mind, 3 working groups were established. So these groups cover basically 3 areas: coordination of the research infrastructures, implementation of journal data policy, but also support for research data management in research institutions. The node members organized several public events to showcase their work and further discussion and exchange with a broader range of national open science stakeholders. Several documents were produced and are listed in these slides. We will share these after the presentation, so you can all click on it and see. Unfortunately, most of those are in Slovenian, but some of those are also translated in English. So among these documents, we can expose the guidelines for implementation of data policies in the scientific journals, but also the 23 things document that we'll look into in a minute. So currently, the node still has an active terminology group that is working on defining the terms from research data management and establishing their Slovene counterparts. In this talk, we focus on one of the topics themed from the research data management working group. This working group recognized the potential of libraries in both advocating for the use and reuse of research data and in providing support for several life stages of open research data. The working group noticed a lack of experience and need for the training on open science related skills and resources among the librarians. Hence the work on the 33 things. So the resource itself, so the 23 things originated, it was prepared by Research Data Alliance Libraries for Research Data Interest Group and has been reused and updated several times. The latest update is an interactive online tool that tailors the content to specific user groups or chosen topics. Altogether, the main version has 10 research data management related subjects that are specifically chosen for the librarians. And yes, we started working on that, trying to see how to progress, what to do in the Slovene version itself. So before doing the adaptation, the working group actually considered the needs for the Slovenian academic libraries and research data management resources that were already available. We also looked into the resources that were already translated in the Slovene language, mainly because of the terminology. That's also one of the elements that that we need to learn our students and also librarians. So we found also that several training activities have been taking place, and some of them are listed here. But however, unfortunately, the research data management support is generally still not part of daily practice. What we are also missing in Slovenia is actually institutional data stewardship support. So basically, since we don't have this kind of support, researchers still turn to librarians, and librarians really consider themselves generally informed about open research data, but would welcome training and community events to exchange information and experience. And to help them with the information that they could deliver further to researchers, we started working on these 23 things. And yes, our working group that was composed of librarians already involved in open science projects and trainings, but also data archivists who usually also deal with researchers in similar elements. We checked all the main links in the main document, but also we were looking into the possibility of how to upgrade these in order to fill the needs for our Slovenian librarians. So if national relevant equivalent was available, we included in the document. And then also if there was a broader tool that, that we thought was more important, we also changed that as well. We place a lot of emphasis of national available infrastructures, knowledge and resources, which could be demonstrated also in the data reposition section, where we included links to national repositories where researchers can deposit the data. Just to conclude, this document is currently available on the website of Open Library with both digital and printable version. This is also one problem that we encountered, that we actually couldn't put everything in this, 2 slides document, especially also with the links. That was also problematic. So we discussed and we put it also in the digital form online. This document was tested in a focus group and then presented in a workshop, and it received the favorable feedback. But as it is with other trainings that were presented today, there's a need for a constant training, for constant updates, because people do need to have this kind of reminders and trying to see the value of these. So in broader scope, the document should be part of the regular trainings we would suggest in libraries, but also for the PhD students that are working on these. And the note can assist by providing the content and links to international resources and communities. So that's in short for this presentation, being a light talk. And I'm leaving some more time for also the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Irena. We will see if there are some questions for you right now, short one, or maybe it's too fresh for us to have the first reactions. I have a slide to share, and that will be, no, that's not the good one. I will try and share the good screen because I was asked. Yes. Thank you. No, that's the best. Yes, that's the good one. Thank you for participating. We will now have the Q&A part for this session. And thank you for all the questions that were put in the chat window or in the chat box. And I'm going to call back on stage because this is a show, right? Elisa Rodenburg, Anne Barnhart, Rebecca Bryant, Astrid Verheusen, so you can join Irina that stays with us. So feel free, dear participants, feel free to ask any questions to our panelists today about their projects, achievements, discussion series, collaboration, studies experience, and tips. You can use the chat or the Q&A box. And while you are writing, we will start by taking the questions we had in the beginning for Elisa. Elisa, how did you set up the collaboration between several university libraries? If you can have a short answer, and if the other panelists want to react, because some of you were concerned with the same question, then feel free to open the microphone and speak up.
Thanks for that question. I really like that question. What happened is, first of all, the Netherlands is a very small country. It's important to be aware of it. This just is a factor. I think we have, from the top of my head, we have 14 research universities in the Netherlands, so that's not so much. The community of data stewards and librarians who are working with RDM or with research data is just not so very large. So my colleague Lena and I were thinking about an event to set up for researchers to create some kind of game, and we were thinking about this escape room, but we weren't really getting anywhere. And then some of our colleagues just heard about it. So I think Joanne Yeomans, who is in Leiden, heard about it, and she asked if she could be involved. And then our colleagues from Eindhoven also asked if they could be involved. People told each other, and then we that's how it started, and it went very well. We had some very nice brainstorming sessions, and we helped each other with setting up puzzles and perfecting the puzzles as well. So that's how it happened. We didn't really formalize it in any way. It was also really fun, to be honest. We did learn a lot from each other.
Thank you for this answer. I will shift from one presenter to the other. I have not a question, but an answer from Anne to Marta, because you wanted to give some extra explanation, Anne.
Thank you. Yes, so Marta, you had asked about the information literacy framework, and there's an association in the United States called the Association of Colleges and Universities, and our university attempts to align itself with different documents and statements from ACNU, and they have an information literacy values rubric. And so we were borrowing language, and so this is the links. We borrowed heavily AACNU, sorry, not ACNU. We borrowed heavily the language that was used in their information literacy value rubric, which was designed with the Association of College and Research Libraries. So it sounds a lot like the ACRL framework, but the language is shifted slightly to be maybe less librarian-y and a little more for administrators. And because we wanted to attract administrators and faculty, we used that language in our learning outcomes. And when we were developing it, we focused on that. I hope that that's a better answer than I provided before.
Well, thank you for this information. Now we have a feedback from a participant. We'll stay with you, Marta. I'm looking up, here you are. I'm enabling you to talk, and I would be very happy to hear your feedback to Rebecca and Astrid about the series you attended.
Hi, Cecile. Thank you for letting me say how grateful I am to both of you for having organized this. One of the reasons why I registered for this session was that I was noticing that very often the success of a library initiative is not so much to do with our technical knowledge or even funding sometimes, but it's about who you involved in the larger university that helps you bring it forward. So this is why I attended the LIBER sessions, and I found them really helpful in giving me a framework to work with the other units in the university, particularly that set of questions that you shared. I can't remember from which university, but even if you don't ask those questions of the units that you're working with, but even if you just think about those questions for yourself, it's a great way of thinking about how you can work with other areas. And I don't think it applies only to how you roll out open scholarship. I mean, I'm working on all sorts of other things, from rolling out an intercultural awareness program to digital literacy and all sorts of other things. And again, it's the same set of questions that you need to ask, and it's the same way of having to think about how you communicate with other units within your university. So it was hugely helpful. And
Oh,
I'm
thank
still
you.
reading through the stuff, okay? So I haven't, because the workshop's only finished in May, and as you know, librarians only get time a little bit in the summer to kind of think about these things, but it was brilliant.
Thank you, Marta, for your feedback, because it's pretty interesting to have the feedback from the audience also. And maybe you want to react, Astrid and Rebecca?
I'll just say thank you. It's extremely gratifying when you produce something and it ends up being of value to people. The only other thing I'll add is that I'm not a librarian by training. I spent most of my career as an administrator in a college at a major US research institution, but I worked closely with the library and was one of those people who realized the high value that the library could offer. And other people I worked with seemed not to get that. And so part of just what I want to do is help libraries have that better collaboration with that, and actually help other people who are in positions like me also. I mean, this isn't just for libraries, but for me, when I learned about the complex adaptive system, which comes from an American researcher named Roush, it was like, oh, I wish I'd known this. So this would have helped me back when I was at that role. So my hope is that it's helpful for others. So thank you. Deeply gratified.
Yes, I just want to add also my thanks to Marta for giving her feedback. This positive feedback, because this was a pilot that we did, and the positive feedback that we got really is stimulating to think about how to continue with this effort that we are doing.
Okay, and now we have a very personal question, and this is for Elisa. Elisa, are you a gamer yourself, or do you have team members who are? And did this help you with your game design?
To be honest, I'm not a gamer at all.
Okay, you're out.
Oh dear. No, and I don't think many of my teammates, it didn't come up, so I don't think any of us are very avid gamers. But what did help was that this is also how we got the ideas, that I had played such an online escape room earlier last year, which was just created by some friends of mine who did it for fun, basically. So that's how we got the idea, and they shared with us their back end of the game. So we had some inspiration from that.
Okay, thank you very much for taking this personal question.
Yes.
We have a question for Anne. Had all those faculties in a library introduction in the courses before, like in real life? Where there are two questions about, was there a library introduction before? And the second question, which is linked, is were there new faculties on board as soon as it was offered online?
The answer to both those questions is yes. So we had some who had previously incorporated us in their classes, and others who did this then for the first time, based on, and some who had been teaching asynchronously online before, who used the content. And I saw another question about how we got so many different disciplines. And that was, I really think that we took advantage of a moment in time when faculty really needed something. So we benefited from the crisis in that sense, because they were panicked, and we said, here is at least 5 hours of stuff your students can do. And they said, yes, less for me to have to worry about. And so that was, and then once we had the first round of assessment data, they were impressed and wanted to use it. So we got lucky. I think that's really, it's terrible to say the pandemic was lucky, but in that sense, we got lucky.
Okay, a question for Irena. Now that you have this process ongoing, what is the major lesson learned and what is your next step?
Yes, thank you. So I think that one of the lessons learned is that it's a lot of information that librarians actually need to embrace. And I think the decision was that we will progress with smaller targeted events where we would target some of the topics that we produce there, because as a joint session, it seems to be quite a lot. We had some of the workshops and you could see that it's, you know, the people are getting tired of too many information. And so I think what is obvious is that we need to take minor, small steps in order to actually get more knowledge out and for librarians to learn more.
Well, thank you for this insight. We are running almost to the end of this session. Time flies away. So I will take maybe a question for Anne. You have seen all people that there are a few questions for Anne. The first one was, I would like to transfer your module to Moodle. And you had a short discussion, but maybe you can explain what is your project about connecting to Moodle. And also there is a question, maybe linked, about the updating of your course. How do you deal with the course updating?
To deal with but for Moodle, it's that I don't know how smoothly the common cartridge that we can download from Desire to Learn uploads into Moodle. So we just got a Moodle sandbox that we can play with. So if it doesn't transfer smoothly, our plan is to recreate it in Moodle. But we're looking also, there are many LMSs that we don't have access to. So we need partners to help us figure that out. But we can also just give, if you'd have to translate it anyway, we could just provide access to it or other ways for you to download the information. And for updating it, we are between semesters constantly just changing little things. I'm not sure if, like, for the questions, we can update those as they become stale. For people who then have a copy of it, I'm not sure yet what the best means for sharing updates would be. And I'm new to this, so I'd really love ideas and help on that.
And about your ideas, and that will be the last question. We have 30 seconds for this one. Can you tell us more, Anne, about your Spanish adaptation of LibraryDen? Some are engaged on similar project of multilingual tutorials in information literacy. Intercultural aspects are a great challenge. How will you manage this and the updating?
That's why I'm not translating it. I'm working with partners in Mexico, because they will be able to make it culturally appropriate. And we just had conversations that we don't want it to be a Mexican version, but that they want to be conscious to make it more pan-Latin American, so that it will be more broadly useful and need less tweaking. So I think that the main answer is that I, as a white person coming from the United States, can't do it by myself. It takes others. And I'm grateful that I have found some. And before I shut off my mic, I just want to say that, Cecilia, you are just the best moderator. You are a fantastic moderator. So thank you for moderating our panel.
And I'm also timekeeper. Now it's time for coffee and the next session. Thank you all and see you around. Let's try
Thank you.
and experiment together. Goodbye all, and thank you again.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Enjoy the
Bye.
conference and fill the survey.